I might mosey on, and what we can do is I want to talk for a while. For those of you who know me, no, I'll have no problem with that whatsoever. But I genuinely want to try and give as much time for questions as possible. So be thinking of your questions. You can, if you go down to the bottom of the screen in Zoom, you'll see the chat thing. You can throw questions in there and comments in there. But I guess, look, what I wanted to talk about when Angie asked me to cover a topic today, there's a lot of people talking about, does the current circumstances around COVID and all this sort of stuff, what sort of an effect does that have on, people's ability to start a business? And, you hear an awful lot about, oh, the best businesses get started in a recession and all that. And I suppose what I would like to talk about today is that a load of nonsense, or is it actually in any way true and a true reflection on kind of the scenario and the situation with things? So I guess, look, what I wanted to go back, first of all, is I want to go back to the way I think about starting a business. Okay. And for me, I guess I've always been in the middle of this whole conversation of, can you teach somebody to be an entrepreneur? Do they have to be born into it? How do you know whether you're right in terms of, making this big decision to start a business? And I guess through the wisdom of years, if nothing else, I've kind of come up with this three-part formula, really, for whether you're better suited, in employment, or whether you're better suited in the chaos of entrepreneurship. And it kind of comes down to three things. And one thing, the first most important thing, is that there is a skill set in being an entrepreneur. You have to understand product, you have to understand marketing, you have to understand sales, you have to understand finance. Increasingly, you now have to understand people, because now every business is about the team of people, or now, your ability to, I suppose people talk about, the emotional side of engaging with people. So like for me, that's a skill set. They're skills. And you can learn, everybody, no matter what background you come from, you can learn those skills. Like if I decide that I like soccer tomorrow, I can learn how to play soccer. I'm not going to be David Beckham, but I can, if I learn, if I practice, if I repeat, if I read about it, if I engage in the right communities, if I ask the right people, like I can pick up a basic understanding of the skills that you need in order to kind of have a successful business. And hopefully then, by understanding a certain amount about each of those areas, I will understand when it comes to, say, hiring my head of sales, my head of technology, my head of marketing, or that I'll understand where my skills lie and where my skills don't lie, and I'll be able to work that out accordingly. So step one of starting a business or being an entrepreneur is recognizing that there's a skill set, recognizing that you have to have a certain amount of understanding of each of those brackets, because the one that we're going to talk a lot about on this call is the finance one. And the fact that, unfortunately, no, you cannot abdicate everything about your finances to your accountant, because if you do that, then one day your accountant is going to ring you and say, hi, you're out of business, and you're going, I didn't see that happening. So that's the one, the one that I usually find entrepreneurs have the hardest battle with, is the finance one, because I think the gap between the left brain and right brain in terms of, accountancy and entrepreneurship, that's probably a wide enough gap. But what I'd say to you is, if you want to read about it, one of the best books I've ever seen about this stuff is a book called Business for Punks. So Business for Punks is actually the autobiography of Brewdog, one of the most successful breweries in the world. And I like the fact that you have these two guys who decide to set up a brewery business in their shed, in their backyard. And the first thing that these two, you have this mental image of two lads who love drinking beer and want to start making it in their shed. What's the first thing the two of them do? They go off and they do a night course to become chartered accountants, because they recognize that their business is going to be all about money and margin. And there's some really good, the first 3 or 4 chapters of that book, whether it's audiobook or the book in person, I think are required reading for any entrepreneurs, because I think it shows that even in a business as, you know, zany and quirky, you know, as their particular business, their success, and I think they have, I don't know, they have something like 70 or 80 bars around the world. You can buy the beer in like 100 countries around the world. They have 2 primetime TV shows in America based on the brand. But it all comes back to the guys are very good at managing margins and managing numbers. Step 2, once you've established that you have this basic level of skill in each area, and that you, let's call it, you know what you don't know in each area, is the hard part, all right? Because the hard part now is that as well as there being a set of entrepreneurial skills, there is very much an entrepreneurial mindset. And this is, I think, for years and years and years, this really challenged me, because for years and years and years, I found I was one of these people who used to give out about universities and colleges who were teaching entrepreneurship and all this sort of stuff. Because I suppose, you know, I've been very lucky in my life to be exposed and to work with some really, really good entrepreneurs. And, you know, similar enough, I used to be very critical of, I won't say critical, but I used to be very suspicious of state agencies, civil servants, you know, who were always going on about understanding what entrepreneurs need. But I've realized, again, like if you take it that, you know, you have your skill set and then you have your mindset, you can understand that, you know, in the end of the day, it's just a question of, well, it's like a balancing act, you know. Some people are 80-20 skill set mindset. Some people are 80-20 mindset skill set. But what I mean when it comes to mindset is, yes, you do have to be slightly crazy to want to start and run your own business, because it's not a very sane thing for any human being to do, really. Like you're giving up, like you have to come to terms very quickly with the fact that you're giving up stability. So you're giving up the 9 to 5, you're giving up the guarantee. Sorry, maybe not the guarantee. You're giving up somebody else being responsible for making sure that your paycheck is in your bank account at the end of every week. So there is starting your own business, and it depends on your business and everything like that. One of the key critical things is understanding what you're giving up. Because I think there's a lot of people who come into entrepreneurship and that they maybe think it's like a job. And I suppose what I will say to you, having spent 13 straight years now working in startup businesses, between the last 4 years in Republic of Work, and before that Teamwork, and before that Trustif, and before that in Aloft in the US, I can tell you, you know, 13 years of living the startup journey removes an awful lot of the certainties in your life, and an awful lot of the the guarantees, and you have to get very good at dealing with that from a mental perspective. You know, I joke about the crazy part of it, but you have to be very comfortable with a certain level of uncertainty, and you have to be very comfortable with kind of looking inward with yourself, and you know, because what happens otherwise is you get yourself into situations where you're going, you know, we're absolutely relying on this investor, or we're absolutely relying on this deal closing in order to pay bills and stuff like that. Whereas, you know, if you actually start looking at your business in terms of risk management, and, you know, acknowledging that, look, you know, you're not in a job. So essentially, if you want something to happen, you have to make it work. Like, it isn't, I mean, I'm not advocating that, you know, starting a business is 100 hours a week and you can't have anything else. I'm just saying that you have to be aware of the fact that there is no clocking out time, you know, and that one of the dangers and one of the things that as an entrepreneur you really have to protect yourself from is you have to protect your free time. And like, if I pulled up, I'd be embarrassed to do it now, if I pulled up my Google Calendar in front of you today now, there is literally time blocked off for lunch. There is time blocked off to walk my dog. And from 10:30 p.m. tonight to 5:30 a.m. tomorrow is blocked off sleep. And ever since I actually put into my Google Calendar my sleep time, I've actually started sleeping properly, because it's like my brain knows it's not allowed to think about the business from 10:30 until 5:30 in the morning. So that mindset is massively important, because that mindset, no, whether you have a co-founder or not, starting a business is a very lonely journey. You're an awful lot, unless you're blessed and most of your friends happen to be entrepreneurs, you're interacting with your friends who might be bitching about their jobs, but they're still getting paid every week. And they if they decide that they're going to go away on their 2 weeks holidays, that's grand. As an entrepreneur, you have the freedom of going, oh yeah, I'm not going to go into the office until 10 o'clock on a Monday morning, but then you have to deal with the consequences of that in terms of your outlook. So skill set, mindset, and now we come to the most relevant part of the equation, which is the environment. And this is the bit that, to a large degree, is essentially completely out of your control, but is also going to have a huge effect on what's going on. And that's this whole notion of that your business is going to be massively impacted on the economic environment that's around you, both in terms of a microeconomic phase and a macroeconomic phase. So what I mean by that is basic examples. If you are looking to start a business that is massively you're looking to start a software company that's massively capital intensive, and you're going to need a huge amount of software talent, and you want to sell to some of the biggest companies in the world, you're probably not going to start that business on Bear Island. You know what I mean? You probably want to be based on maybe the west coast of America, or you want to be based in Cork, or you want to be based in Dublin. So there's a kind of an environmental fact in terms of, like, some businesses just cannot, location is very important. Ireland is a particularly good place to start a lot of businesses, because we have a lot of very varied markets, but it's a kind of a terrible place to scale any business, because the number of people are so small. So, you see a lot of businesses that might start and they might go, hey, we're going to launch the business in Cork. And then when we finish launching the business in Cork, we're going to go to Waterford, and then we're going to go to Limerick, and then we're going to go to Galway, and then we're going to go to Derry, and then we're going to go to Belfast, and then we're going to go to Dublin. Trust me, that doesn't work in Ireland, because by the time you get to Limerick, you're out of money. And that's because in Ireland, not only do we're very, for the population we're very geographically and demographically spread. So if you're in America and you start in Boston and then you want to kick off in Chicago, you kind of take the model that you started in Boston with and you knock it out in Chicago, and it kind of works. Whereas if you start something in Cork and you grow to being, say, well known in Cork, trust me, you take that to Limerick and it's kind of like starting from scratch again, just because you have, we don't have a lot of similarity in markets here. But then, you start something in Ireland, and, your aim should always be go international, as fast as possible. Now, these days, the idea that, well, we're going to start the business and in 3 years' time, we're going to go to the UK, then we're going to go to France, and then we're going to go to Berlin. And the only advantage that you have as a startup business is speed, because money buys everything else. So the only thing a big competitor doesn't have is speed, because their businesses just can't work at speed, because they're laborious and there's process and everything. So the only thing that you have as a startup business is you might have no money, you might have a half-assed product, but you have speed. So you can land grab, and you can move fast, and you can react fast, and you can make changes fast. So you have to move at speed. And that's again going back to the mindset side of things. If you are too risk adverse, moving at speed will be a challenge for you, because your brain will always be telling you, we need to hold back, we need to hold back, we need to hold back. that's one of the things. One, I would say, I look at some great businesses that I've seen fall at the hurdle over the last couple of years. It's usually been that it's not that they haven't been raising money or they haven't been this, it's that they haven't actually been moving fast enough. They've been moving too slow, and they've gotten themselves into this horrible position where they're waiting for the next check, they're doing this, they're doing that. People love momentum, and in Ireland in particular, you know, if you seem to have momentum, and if you're seen to be growing, and if you're seen to be the next big thing, first of all, the community will support you tremendously and will work hard to help you. But also, kind of, to be honest with you, the state works the same way. Like Enterprise Ireland, the local enterprise boards, like incredible resources, but they also like backing horses that are in the, you know, in the first five, as opposed to horses that are in the back of the pack, you know. So I think momentum is massively important. And then, you know, momentum is so connected to your environment. If you're not in the right environment for your business, then it can be very, very difficult to get that momentum going. You obviously then, in terms of your environment, also have to take into effect simple things like you have to take COVID and other things like that into the equation. But the honest truth is, a lot of that stuff, you can let it overwhelm your business, or you can kind of let it just define your business. Like you can basically go, okay, you know, I'm going to, because COVID-19, we don't know what's happening with it, I'm going to hold off doing anything right now until the end of the year. We're just going to sit, and we're just going to, we'll work on the product instead of working on growth. I think that's the wrong call. Like I think the one good thing that ever came out of our banks in Ireland was, I think, AIB's slogan, backing brave, because I think that's a pretty good slogan for how the entrepreneurial community works in Ireland. Like, bravery is rewarded. And I mean, if you're seen to be building something, if you're seen to be driving something forward, if you're seen to be pushing against mediocrity, I can only tell you, like, you will have the backing of so many people. Like, we are so blessed in Ireland to have such an incredible entrepreneurial community. And I don't think people, because in your day job, you'd never say, find somebody on Twitter like Mary McKenna or Dan Kiley. You'd never reach out to them and say, hey, can I have help with my day job? But we are so blessed in Ireland that, you know, to have such an active entrepreneurial community across a whole bunch of social networks. And I guarantee you, you reach out to any of them, the first thing they'll do is they'll go and have a look at what you're up to. And if they see that you're putting in the work, you will get no end of help from people. If they see that you're kind of standoffish, or you're holding offish, or you're expecting somebody else to be the driving force behind your business, that's when you'll get the, look, you might get in touch with my PA there, and if there's any time maybe in the future, we might have a call maybe in a year or two. That's when the standoffishness happens. Like, you know, it's your business, it's your baby. Be brave and be the driving force behind it. What I wanted to, look, they, as I said, they're kind of the, they're the three factors that I always kind of say, get the piece of paper, divide it in three, and it's skill set, mindset, and environment. And it's not about, there is no passing grade here, all right? It is not if you don't score, but that piece of paper is you acknowledging the strengths and weaknesses of what you're starting off with. And if your environment isn't quite right, then you know you got to put a lot of work into that. If your skill set, if you're not, that piece of paper is never going to be seen by another human being. But I think you need to be open with yourself. That's your business model canvas. That's your thing that says, I feel like I have the right attitude, but I'm kind of worried about financial security, or I'm worried that I won't be aggressive enough about stuff. Your skill set is, you know what, I'm really, like, I haven't touched accounts since leaving cert. I need to know a bit more about that. Or, sure, I'm going to bring in a head of sales. He's going to know everything, or he or she is going to know everything about selling. I don't need to know about sales. Like, you need to know a little bit about everything, just enough to be dangerous, you know? And then, as again, the environment can't do a lot about, but you need to be hyper aware that maybe what you're working on is going to be harder or easier in the current either physical environment or the current macro environment. And again, it's just about having the awareness of that. There was a few things that I kind of specifically wanted to cover, and I'm going to kind of go through them in order. So I was going to start with a kind of a basic one of, look, as I call it, it's kind of like the stupidity test, you know, how to judge whether your idea has any hope of making it as a business. The first thing I'll say here is, look, I'll refer to what I refer to as the Bible, which is a book by a guy called Rob Fitzpatrick called The Mom Test. And it's an absolute Bible. Rob was actually on, I think last weekend, was on the Innovation Show in RTE. And it's a book about how to ask the right questions. It's based on this premise, you know, if you can't explain your idea to your mom, you're in an awful lot of trouble, you know. But it's also based on the premise that when you explain your idea to your mom, whether she likes it or not, she's going to tell you she likes it. So it's about it's about product market fit, but it's about actually getting the right answers, because that's what we're talking about. I mean, how do you know whether your business, doesn't matter whether it's a product, whether it's service, whether it's a food truck, whether it's AI, whether it's biotechnology, like, there's two things it has to do. It has to provide a solution and it has to provide value. And like, if you want to reverse engineer any successful business, it's because it provides a solution and it provides value. And you can talk a lot of businesses get stuck in, they're talking about features. They're talking about, hey, we're opening a restaurant. Our restaurant is open from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. and we do this and we do that and we do that. Like, that's features. Like, the problem your customers have is they're hungry. Your solution is we do really, really good food, you know? So I think a lot of people in the early days, when they're talking about their USP and what's going to make their business different, they get trapped very early in, here are the features we're going to have. And here's the honest truth is that you don't know what features you're going to have, or you shouldn't know what features you're going to have until you start talking to customers. Because the customers, there's no point in, when Republic of Work started here, we opened 8 to 8, Monday to Saturday. Guess what? Nobody wanted to come in on Saturday afternoon. So we built a business model based on me paying staff 8 to 8, 5 days a week and all this sort of stuff. Got to the point where we realized, well, people do want to come in on Saturdays, but they want to come in and work 8 to 4. So by actually waiting and talking to customers and seeing what their need and requirement was, we could have saved ourselves a pile of money. So for me, every business starts with a very simple thing, which is, what's the problem you're solving for your customer? What's the solution? What's your first solution of how you're going to deliver, how you're going to fix that problem for them? And if your business is any good, that solution is going to evolve over time. But what shouldn't change is the problem, because the problem should be something that you're passionate about. Like, the problem should be something that you have some sort of advantage in, because you know the space, you understand the problem, you've been through it, and now you're looking for a solution, and you come up with your first version of the solution and you put that in front of customers. And that's where this product market fit idea comes in, because the solution should evolve based on the feedback from your customers. And then eventually, once you think you have this product market fit, or once you think you're at that point where your solution, you know, fixes the problem, then the last bit of that equation is value. So like, if you can are you fixing the problem for your customer at a price point that they're very comfortable with, at a price point where, not that they think they're getting a steal because you're in business to make money, but that it's reasonable. You know what I mean? I spoke this morning to a startup who are building like an amazing set of tools for a particular type of business. And it got to the pricing page in the deck, and it was like, and we're going to charge $80 a month for it. And I went back, and to be honest with you, I couldn't fault almost anything about the proposal, short of I said, like, your value proposition is completely wrong. I said, you're selling them a product for $80 a month because you think they're price sensitive. Whereas, like, I pay, you know, I'm in a different industry, but for a solution that fixes a problem for me at a similar level, like, I'm paying €1,200 a month for the software in that space. So you think you're being good value, but you're not, because companies, in particular larger companies, they are less price sensitive than people think they are, and price can often say an awful lot about what, because the price basically says a lot about what you think of your own product. Like when I worked in Teamwork, you know, we sold a product, productivity software, and at the time, the most you could pay us was €250 a month, $250 a month. And for that, you had unlimited projects, unlimited users, blah, blah, blah. But like, we had companies around the world like Disney, PayPal, eBay, Netflix, TripAdvisor, who had 30,000 employees, you know, using our software and giving us 250 quid a month. And I hope we all recognize that that was not of benefit to anyone, because the company kind of went, sure, we're only giving the lads 250 quid a month. We don't really feel like we can go back with, you know, product feature demands, and like, we don't feel we're giving the lads enough money that we can kind of dictate a little bit. So they didn't feel like they were getting full use of the product because they weren't paying us enough. And suddenly then, over the course of a couple of conversations, they went from paying us that to paying a kind of a six-figure sum per year. And then at that point, they felt they were getting real value out of the product, because they felt, now we're giving the lads a good chunk of money. Now we can kind of come back and be a bit more demanding on what we need in order for it to be, you know, that perfect fit we need in our business. So like, when you talk about value, like, you're not talking about price, you're talking about, you know, using our software, using our product, using our service, our customer, what value are our customer getting from that? You know, are they saving themselves a whole bunch of cost, a whole bunch of time? If they're saving time, can we put a dollar value on the time that they're saving? And then, you know, are we being paid a reasonable amount of money for, say, the time or the money or effort that they're saving? And I think it's really important that in the early days, you're very honest with yourself about that stuff, because otherwise you find yourself selling, you know, a product too expensive or too cheap. And frankly, the too cheap is more damaging in a long term for the business, because if you sell yourself too cheap, that's where you're going to create you're going to create maybe more demand, but you're going to massively affect your ability to deliver you want to over deliver. If you're selling yourself too cheap in a market, you're definitely never going to be over deliver, and you're never going to be this idea that you have where, sure, we'll be able to up the prices over time. Trust me, when you're a successful business with, you know, a couple of 100,000 customers, the hardest thing in the world to do is change your pricing by 15 cents. You know, it causes chaos. Question 2 that I wanted to solve, the juggling act. When you're getting started, there's so many different things that you need to do. And there's this massive juggling act in terms of, like, how do you work out what exactly needs to get done? And I've tried every version of it over the years, from to-do lists to written notebooks, software tools, workbooks, worksheets, and there's a place for it all. But I guess the way I like to explain, whenever I meet a startup, I kind of say, look, well, you know, in order to get your business up and running, like, what are the 4 or 5 things that we need to focus on? And, you know, one of them is usually, again, doesn't matter really whether it's software, hardware, food, hairdressing, whatever. there's a product element, you know, what are you going to be selling? So there's a kind of a, you know, there is a certain amount of work that has to be done on the product in the business. There is a certain amount of work that has to be done on the finance in the business. Opening bank accounts, registering for VAT, deciding whether you're going to take outside investment, applying for grants, all that sort of stuff. There is a sales column, we'll call it. And I guess what I kind of like to say to people is, you know what, take a piece of paper, decide on these 4 or 5, I kind of call them roadmaps just for the sake of it. And I kind of say, well, you know, as you're progressing along with your business, you got to kind of make sure that progress is being made on each of these pieces of paper. So I say to people, you know, you're not getting into a big formal sales roadmap, product roadmap, finance roadmap, but just get the pieces of paper and stick them up on a wall. And like every week, you should be aiming to kind of make some little bit of progress. So like the great thing, if you have the freedom to stick these 5 pieces of paper up on the wall or stick them on your iPad or wherever they are, is anytime then that something occurs to you that fits into one of those boxes, write it onto it. So you end up with essentially, instead of one giant task list that's just has too much stuff on it, it's divided into each of these categories. And there will be weeks where you just go, I'm not in the money headspace right now. You know, I've just paid bills. I don't want to be thinking about finance, but actually I'm in a very creative space. So I'm in that mood to think about branding or marketing or product or whatever. And that week you make more progress on, you know, your product roadmap than you do on your finance thing. But I think any successful business that I've seen, they're always making a little bit of progress on each area. They're in the software world, when we often kind of like, you know, I often ask if I'm helping any startups out, I often ask them, look, send me an email once a month with a bit of an update. And I kind of say to them, you know, put in your 5 headings and just put in a couple of bullet points, you know, what's the good, bad, and ugly that happened in that particular area. And the only startups I ever get worried about is the ones where, you know, there's a lot of stuff happening in one area, but there's nothing happening in other areas. Because, you know, what's going to happen in them is, you know, if you're focusing all of your effort on sales, you suddenly get yourself into a situation where you close these amazing sales deals, but because you haven't been doing any work on the finance side of your business, you know, you can't afford the stock to deliver on them. So I think you have to be, if you're starting a business, you have to feel like you're making a little bit of progress on each area over time, you know, and if you can kind of, you know, if you're going into every week going, I've fallen behind a little bit on my finance stuff or my sales stuff or my product stuff, I think that's, you know, that should be your motivation then to kind of catch up on that sort of stuff, you know. I think that, to me, that always kind of helps me move forward, you know. And every week, at the end of every week, I always feel like I've moved forward, because even if the week got bogged down in a whole pile of micro tasks, I can still usually finish most weeks going, do you know what, look, I got that investor proposal or investor pitch done, or I got that sales contact done. You can always feel like you made progress somewhere, you know. Question 3 of 5, where do you go for help and advice that you can trust? I'm going to say the most important word here in this equation is trust. Because, man, you can go anywhere for advice. There's this wonderful tool called Google, and it will give you an answer to any question that you could possibly conceive. But the honest truth is it going to give you the right answer? And I feel like, in particular, Ireland, we have a bit of a challenge in this regard, because we've got an awful lot of very well-meaning coaches, consultants, advisors, civil servants, and I want to say well-meaning, and I want to say with the best of intentions. We have some bad apples, but the bad apples, they get found out. Ireland is too small, and the bad apples get found out. But the one thing I would say is, obviously, you need, for me, if you're looking for general advice, well, then you go to people who are giving you general advice. If you are looking for in-depth expertise, you need to get people who can give you in-depth expertise. So if you want to sound out your business idea, if you want to chat about your skill set, chat about mindset, chat about stuff, you have a million places that you can go for that stuff, from social media to Google to local enterprise boards to Enterprise Ireland to organizations like Network Ireland, Cork Chamber, IT at Cork, Junior Chamber Ireland, all these different brilliant places where you can go to talk to people. Caveat: if you are trying to design a sales roadmap for how your widget company is going to break America, probably a good idea to talk to somebody who has broken America or who has had a widget company. And why I say that is because while there is a lot of very general knowledge that translates across business in Ireland, there is also an awful lot of hugely specific stuff that can be very consequential. So, like, I'll give you one prime example. I obviously, because of me and my background, I talk to an awful lot of software startups in particular. And an awful lot of them come to me, and, you know, we talk about a lot about what a software company needs and how it's going to grow and scale. And a lot of them have gone off and they've done various courses and they've done various workshops and they've been given various advice around sales and marketing and stuff. And frankly, in a lot of cases, I have to hit a very, very hard reset on any advice they've received regarding sales and marketing, because software sales and marketing is an incredibly specialized skill set. It's very different. I mean, I will hands up on my heart and say probably one of the most challenging things for me over the last 4 years of Republic of Work has been the sales and marketing, because my background for 10 years before that was in software. So, like, I used to have a team and we used to drive traffic to a website, and you delivered a value proposition and you got them signed up for a trial, and then you converted the trial. And once you worked out how to do it, you put budget into it, you did a lot of Google ads, and it started to repeat and you improved over time. You know, you come into a business like Republic of Work, it's a real estate business, and it's kind of like you're back to selling one sale at a time. And it's a very different skill set. And I think it's really important that I think you understand. I always say to company founders anyway, yeah, you know, take everything in, bring a notebook to every meeting, write everything down, but then, you know, spend the time to go back and review what you heard. Consider the source and the experience from where you heard it, and then consider its relevance to your own particular business, you know? Because I know I have some brilliant friends who are in, say, sales and in marketing in particular. Or, you know, the other big thing that often comes across in software companies is people talking about, well, you know, it's cheap to build stuff on the internet. So, instead of building a retail shop, build an e-commerce shop, you know. And that's all well and good until, you know, until your business scales, and suddenly then you're paying for bandwidth and you're paying for hosting fees. Because when you're a small business, your website, you perceive it as being free. When you get to the scale of teamwork.com and, you know, you're paying 50, 100 grand a month for your hosting fees, unless you had somebody who was talking to you about, you know, the software side of your business, you know, they don't perceive, to me, like it's the equivalent of, hey, if you're starting a retail store, at some stage you're going to deal with warehousing costs and all these things. So I mean, it's really important that you consider context. Ed, very good point there. Ed has just made a point about there is a trust issue, right? And like what I would say to you is, there are so many successful founders in Ireland that are willing to give time to you for free. And you know how you usually spot them? Because nobody asks for money. What they ask for is a bit of consideration around their time. Time is money to them. They know you're a startup. They've had the scars themselves. So their attitude is, look, I would love to give you a bit of time. You know, can we do it on a Saturday morning? Can we do it at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday morning? You know, can you fit into my schedule so that I can give you that value? You know, there's a difference between like that sort of coaching and advice and needing to bring in, you know, a consultant who absolutely deserves to be paid for their work. You know, those two things are very different things. And I think it's important for founders to realize, you know, if you're bringing in a consultant, it's maybe because there's a skills gap that you need to fill temporarily. If you want a mentor or a coaching relationship, you know, like, for instance, you know, I get people come to me the whole time for marketing advice. I'll talk to you about marketing all day. But like, if you want me to run your Google ad campaigns, or you want me to run your Facebook ad campaigns, or you want me to write you a marketing plan, like that's not what a coach or a mentor does. You know, we're there to help you find the answers, and we're there to provide advice, and we're there to maybe give you a bit of guidance around the best ways to do things. But if you want actual work done, you know, we might be able to recommend somebody to you. And I think it's important to get those things right. Ed made a point around, you know, the mental health side of startups. I think that's where the mentor coach style stuff is invaluable, because I think the stresses that are put on somebody when you're starting a business, you need to hear that even the successful people go through that. Like, I guarantee you, Mary McKenna on the call there is having some stressful moments this week. Every time I meet my old boss, Pat Phelan, you know, who's had multiple successful exits, he's stressed about something. You know, like, the stress never goes away in running your own business, because there's always stuff to focus on. But having a relationship with somebody, or having a relationship with a bunch of founders where you can be honest with each other, and you can come out and you can say, Jesus, COVID has hit us really, really bad. I'm really worried about salaries next month. You know, what am I going to do about paying it? You know, the fact that if you're honest with somebody, they can turn around and say, hey, well, look, I can, you know, my business we can front you for a month, or have you tried this scheme, or look, have you been onto revenue about this, or whatever. Like, a coach mentor relationship, that's got to be very, very transparent and very, very open. But I would say probably no better place in the world than Ireland, because there's a natural thing in most Irish people to help out. And what I would just say is, if that's not the vibe you're getting from the person that you're talking to, then they're probably from a different camp than one you want to be interacting with, you know? I think Tom, very good point there. A good coach will challenge you. The best coaches that I've had in my career, like, think American NFL coaches, they're there to help you with your plan. They're also there to kick your ass a bit. I know that any of you who know Pat Phelan know our mutual buddy, Liam Casey. Liam is an incredibly successful entrepreneur, but like, he is an ass kicker. And like, you get on a call with him, you'll get a minute or two of pleasantries, and then it'll be like, well, what are the numbers? What's this? And you know, you're down in the dumps because something isn't going well. It will be, well, what are you going to do about it? And it helps, you know, it gives you that kind of that kick in the ass maybe that you need to take things a bit forward. The other thing I would say to you, plain and simple, is if you're looking for advice, and if you're looking for coaches, you ask people. Like, you go to people and you just ask, come here, I need you know, I'm really looking for somebody who could help me with X, Y, and Z. It's one of the things I'm most proud about with Republic of Work, that we've managed to kind of centralize some of that stuff. Like, we now have an expert network that the members can tap into, and you can say, listen, I want to set up a share scheme for my employees. I need help with trying to buy product from China. I need X, I need Y. We might know somebody, but if we don't know somebody, we'll definitely know somebody who knows somebody. And that's the advantage of kind of connecting into networks and stuff. But like, I just love the fact in Ireland that, like, even if you know nobody in Ireland, you can send somebody a message on LinkedIn or Twitter and say, listen, really, this is a really cheap move now, hitting you out of the blue. Would you have 5 minutes? You know, I'll be massively respectful of your time. And here is the question that I need answered. Do not ask somebody for 15 minutes for a cup of coffee. Ask them, would you have 15 minutes because I want to ask you your advice about X? Because if you say to me, come here, DC, can I meet you on Friday for 15 minutes? Then I don't think about anything between now and then. If you say to me, come here, we're really trying to launch in Germany, would you have 15 minutes for a cup of coffee on Friday to have a chat about it? For the next 3 days, all I'm thinking about is, what am I going to say now to Gordon, you know, on Friday about that? And that way we sit and we get 15 minutes where we're talking about implementing stuff, as opposed to 15 minutes where you're explaining why you want to get into Germany. So Mary and myself are kindred souls when it comes to what I describe as the entrepreneurial industrial complex here in Ireland. I think it's getting a little bit better in terms of, you know, I compare it to, jokingly, to the military industrial complex that kind of self-sustains itself. Mary, I have to send you on. My brother is a lecturer in the University of New South Wales. He's deputy head of the School of Business. I keep calling him my baby brother, but he's 31, so I probably can't call him that anymore. But it's this amazing paper about essentially the entrepreneurial industrial complex, and it's co-authored by the University of Edinburgh, the London School of Economics, and Stanford University. And it's talking a lot about the dangers of, you know, the entrepreneurial industrial complex in terms of how it can really damage a country's ability to generate entrepreneurs. So that's something anybody who's interested in that, me at dc.ie, I'll forward you on a copy of it. It's light reading for an academic paper. The last thing I'm going to just very briefly talk about is finance, and then I'm going to kind of open up for questions. So if anybody has questions, fire them on. The finance part of it, because that's the bit that freaks everyone out. And all I would say to you is, yes, it should freak you out. It's money. Stuff costs money. Stuff has to be paid for. It's not the first thing that should stress you out. Because if you have a good product that's solving a problem, if you demonstrate you have the right team, if you demonstrate that you have the ability to execute on your business idea, if you show that you are coachable, if you show that you're not obsessed with your idea to the point of ego and arrogance, there is plenty of money around. And that's, I suppose, look, that's easy to say for me as somebody who's been around a long time. But there is, right now in Ireland, there is an incredibly active angel investment scene. People who have done well for themselves, who are willing to finance business ideas. But the reality is, you know, you have to acknowledge that they want to make an investment, so they need to know how they're getting their money back. They want to feel like they're going to have an input, so they want to feel like you're willing to listen to their ideas. You have multiple other sources of finance. People always stay clear of bank loans because they perceive them as being laborious and they perceive them as being very paperwork heavy. I hope I'm not bursting anybody's bubble to say to them, if you take money from anybody, there are going to be paperwork involved, and there is going to be, you know, they are going to want certainty around stuff. So while, look, banks are never that easy, never turn them down as a source of finance, because the reality is, even if you go through their process and they still turn you down, the discipline, the stuff that they're asking you for, any investor is going to ask you for that stuff. So therefore, it is never going to be a wasted proposition. Similarly, in terms of applying for grants with, say, the local enterprise board, who we're blessed here in Cork to have exceptional people in our 3 local enterprise boards here. So you have Cork City, what they call South Cork, which is kind of like a lot of Cork County, and then Cork North and West, which kind of is Mallow and West Cork. And we're lucky, we've got incredible people, very helpful people, who will, you know, you go in and like they will challenge you on your idea. And if you're somebody who doesn't like being challenged on your idea, you're in the wrong business, because you're going to spend most of your life justifying your idea. The fact that somebody is challenging your idea does not mean that they think it's a bad idea. Like they're kind of poking you to see how you're going to react. And I mean, if you react well, that says a lot about your character. If you react in a very negative, aggressive, adversarial way, well, then their attitude is, well, this person's going to be impossible to work with. You know, so I think that's why you always find people in Ireland, it's, you know, they always say it's your second business is always easier than your first. Your second business is always easier because at that stage, people, it's not necessarily based on the success of your first business, but it's based on the fact that then people have insights into you as a person and how you react and how you're going to react to code, stuff like that. So you've got a reputation then for being somebody who doesn't just talk about executing, but actually can executing and is willing to course correct and is willing to make the changes and stuff. That's why your second business is easier than your first. So I think with the Leos and Enterprise Ireland and all that sort of stuff, what's important with that is that you come into them thinking about them. Somebody gave me a great example once. It's like the Olympics. I could decide tomorrow that I wanted to be an Olympic class pole jumper. Like, I could probably go about that myself, or I could connect with the Olympic Council of Ireland, connect with the training structures, connect with everything, and follow an established route. It's very much the same with Enterprise Ireland and with anybody, whether it's venture capitalists or anybody else. There is a way to do these things. And if you come into them going, I want to learn about the way of doing these things, and I want to, to a certain degree, I want to conform to the expected way to do things, as opposed to like, I want to kick in the door with a balaclava over my head and a shotgun and just ask them for money. Like, hasn't worked very well for the majority of approaches, you know? So I think it's important that I joke and I call it, you learn the game of how to interact with them. But I mean, more importantly, I mean, like, you do your research, you go and you talk to people and you find out, what do I need to do to have the most positive engagement with Enterprise Ireland? What do I do? Talk to people who've gotten funding from the Leo and ask them for their advice, and then tailor your proposition to suit them, you know? I feel like I'm going to shut up now because I've talked for an hour. But I'd love to do some kind of, if anybody has any specific questions, if anybody has any, like, it might not be about your own business, if anybody has anything they'd like to just throw out there, I'm happy to chinwag, like. So you can all go off mute and we can sing a song if you want to, you know.
Hi DC, this is Susan.
Hello.
Hello. I haven't put too much thought into this question now, so bear with me while I try to frame it. But I work for myself. I'm a leadership coach, and I am a very small fish compared to what you were just talking about there. But what I'm wondering is, who do I need to partner with next?
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate in that I'm going through the Leo mentoring program, which is 3 sessions, and she's given me some great ideas, right? And I have good ideas, etc. But I'm not sure, is it business partner who can drive me and give me their insights? Is it a social media campaign person who can help me figure out how to manage my marketing and my social media? Is it an accountability partner that I need? Is it somebody who has already been in business and can tell me how I can scale? Because I'm looking probably to going from having one-on-one sessions to online coaching and like scaling. How do I scale for 2021? The money, the investment is not my worry. But investing in the wrong person is my concern, because I don't know who I should be working with. And I have stupidly, luckily signed up to loads of wonderful people on the internet who are all bombarding me with these, join this group and join that group, and only €1,200 a month and we'll scale you. But is that what I need, or do I need somebody local, or where do I go?
Yeah, I think look the way I would look. I worked for myself as a consultant for a long time, and I still do the odd bit and stuff like that. The way I look at I kind of have, there's 2 things I look at it when it comes to the future of all business, every business, no matter what business you're in. In a world of infinite choice, all right, which is kind of what people have these days, because if they're looking for a leadership coach, they can do it, as you said, in person, online, through this, through that, whatever. So people are going to buy from there's going to be 2 things involved in every buying decision. That's expertise and experience.
Mm-hmm.
People, in a world of infinite choice, you buy from the person who you consider an expert, and you buy from the person where you enjoy the experience of interacting with their business. All right. So I think in terms of a lot of consultant type professions, or those sort of one-on-one type relationships, I think it's really important to be perceived as an expert. And I think that's where marketing, social media, and that stuff comes into it, because I think you need to be recognized as an expert to be able to maximize what's going on. The experience of doing business with you needs to be very sharp. It needs to be, that when people need appointments, the appointments kind of suit them as well as you. That the experience of maybe follow-on emails, the experience of booking appointments, sending them information, that all needs to come across as very professional, because it needs to, again, they need to be impressed with their experience of doing business with you, so that they have no qualms then in recommending you to other people. Because this is my second theory of the future of business. The future of business is all about selling to niche.
Selling to who, sorry?
Selling to niches. Not selling wide, selling deep. And like as a marketeer of like 20 plus years, who spent most of his career, how do we get it out to as many people as possible? I can tell you that doesn't work anymore. And it doesn't work anymore for a whole pile of reasons related to customer acquisition cost and all sorts of stuff. Like going wide, as they call it, with your marketing, trying to access the most amount of people, and then thinking, well, if I can get it to 100,000 people, and if I can get 0.01 of those to sign up, that's kind of 1990s thinking. Like, again, because you want to be perceived as an expert, you want your advice to be expert level, and you don't want to necessarily be a generalist. So like what I've actually seen, Susan, an awful lot in the US at the moment is leadership coaching in particular segments. So where somebody, and what I'm saying is, this does not mean changing your business model. It just means that from a marketing perspective, you are kind of going out and you are saying, well, my areas of expertise are leadership coaching in large multinationals. My leadership experience is leadership in SME type companies. Like, you obviously never turn down business, but instead of generalizing and saying that I can help everyone, you pick the couple of areas that you know you are very, very strong at, and you demonstrate your expertise in those areas. And to answer a further part of your question, how do you do that from a sales perspective? Well, for instance, as an example, I have a very good friend who is an incredible sales guy, and he's very good at helping startups build out sales channels.
Mm-hmm.
And he's working as a consultant. So what he has done is he has gone and he has looked at, well, what other experts in the Cork locale are startups interacting with? And the two big ones obviously are accountants and lawyers. So he has gone to the accountancy firms and the law firms who specialize in dealing with SMEs. And he's essentially gone to them and said, look, you guys would much prefer that the companies you're interacting with had strong sales plans and had strong sales skills. So would you be interested in recommending me to your clients? And I think what you're providing is a badly needed skill in SMEs, because again, to me, I always connect leadership to a certain degree with the mental health aspect, because sometimes it's a lack of confidence in people, or it's a lack of knowing what leadership actually is and how it can drive their business. And sometimes, it can come close to HR stuff in terms of how are you holding people accountable and that sort of stuff. But I think if you could, instead of doing a solo run, if you can connect with some other businesses that are selling to the sort of clients that you would like, I think that that kind of solves a couple of your problems at once, because you end up then having a group where once a month you go for coffee, and it's kind of like, well, here are some new people I'm working with. Here are some new people. Instead of getting into, big complicated networking stuff, you're going for coffee or a glass of wine with 2 or 3 other people who are in a similar profession, so you can share your experiences of working independently and that sort of stuff. But you can also potentially share clients and share, any tips and that sort of stuff. So I would think that, like, you being able to demonstrate yourself as an expert, you being, very kind of making sure that you are very comfortable that any interaction that a client has with you, whether it's through an email or through your website or anything like that reflects what you want them to think about your business. And then I would say, like, for me, because I'm obsessed with going after a niche and trying to dominate it and then moving on to a niche, I would start to think about smaller, more targeted groups. Like, for instance, I have found the Leos to be exceptional in this regard, that, if you have a relationship with the Leos as a client, after a little bit of time, it's very easy for you to go back to the Leos and say, guys, you helped me so much with my process. I would love to help you guys with some of your other clients. Would you perhaps consider recommending me? And I've seen that circle build an awful lot. And, the Leos obviously have formal programs in terms of where you can register with them and be paid by the Leos. But the Leos are often just asked, can you recommend somebody to us? And I mean, they like, obviously, once the Leo have any engagement with a business, they always like to feel that circle is kind of turning around, and they like to see people they've worked with get successful and work with other people, So I don't know if any of that is of you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
No problem. Mary, I deliberately wanted to give you you beat me to the plug. But if you want, do you want to hop on there for a second and just tell people about it?
Yeah, don't mind. Thanks a lot, DC. So there's 5 of us actually have started Awaken Hub. So it's a support community for female founders. And the ultimate aim is to help early stage women access funding quicker. And so there's a lot of other stuff that we're doing in and around that. We've got a great event happening 10th of August, 5 o'clock. And you'll find us on Twitter at Awaken Hub. So yeah, any women founders that you know or that you could think of, please send them my way. Thanks.
Cheers. And guys, I know from seeing some of that won't be a half-assed event. I mean, I guarantee you that, like, with the ladies on the call, the gentlemen on the call, I'd invest in some wigs and I'd sneak onto the call, because I reckon there's going to be some very valuable stuff in that.
Men are more than welcome to join. I think we did our first call earlier this month, DC. We had 65 people from around the world, and 5 of them were some brave men that joined us, and we were pleased to see them.
They stayed quiet in the background. Yeah, the gentlemen, we have to realize that we're the fading face of entrepreneurship, definitely in Ireland. But I think it's fantastic, because it's I actually always try any of the female friendly, as I call them, entrepreneur events. I always try and engage with them, because there's always such incredible energy, and it's almost like, for me, it's almost like entrepreneurship 2.0, because like in the old school male version of entrepreneurship, we made life so hard for ourselves, and I'm always massively impressed by all of the women who I know starting businesses, because they always find a better, easier, and more sensible way to do everything. So I think
I have a question for you around this, actually, DC. The reason that we've started it is because we found from talking to lots of women during lockdown that the types of businesses that they start often fall outside the eligibility criteria for NDRC, for Enterprise Ireland. So they do that first New Frontiers course and everything, and they get started. And then when they apply for the competitive start funding, they don't get it, and they're told that their business doesn't meet the eligibility criteria. And it's because women start slightly different sorts of businesses.
Yeah. I got not long before the last general election, our new Cork-based, or I wasn't Cork-based, but our new Cork Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, was in here in Republic of Work, and I had a conversation with him that I was promised an opportunity if he got into government to come back to him on, because I think, look, one of my only genuine criticisms of the Irish approach, government approach to entrepreneurship is yeah, like, you have a kind of this weird scenario where, you know, whether it's through the Leos or through Enterprise Ireland to a certain degree, I understand a bit better. You know, their focus is, you know, export led, blah, 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 blah. But I mean, if you're a local enterprise board, if I want to set up anything like dog grooming, hairdressers, marketing agency, if I want to set myself up as a self-employed consultant, like, I should be supported. Like, if I make that leap from employment into self-employment or into starting a business, I should be supported. And that's not the current system. At the moment, the current system, you know, doesn't support, like, if you want to start a cafe, you won't be supported. But like, if you want to start a food company, you know, there's wiggle room, you know. And I think what you're saying there is especially true, because, you know, a lot of these criteria are kind of a couple of decades old, and they were based on very, and again, this isn't like deliberate sexism, but they were based on the sort of businesses that guys were starting 15 years ago. And they didn't account for a lot of how every sort of business has changed. Like, I often joke, you know, if I was going to shut down Republic of Work today and set up Ireland's largest marketing agency and employ 400 people here in the building instead, like, I'm totally on my own. There's no arm of the state can support me in that. And it feels like a gap. And I think for me, the one area I would say that's helped a lot in this space is the places, look, I'm not plugging ourselves, but digital hubs in general. Like, the fact that now physical communities are forming around the country, in everywhere from Bear Island, Skibbereen, Cork, wherever. Look, that's really helping, because before, that's when that sort of stuff wasn't as organized, it was tricky. So I think now there is definitely time for a bit of a relook at this stuff. And I don't know, you know, I've talked to a lot of people in government about it. Not sure what will happen. I feel like it's many years now since there was a document done, I think maybe around 2010. There was a kind of a document for the future of entrepreneurship in Ireland done up by, it was chaired by actually one of our residents here, Sean O'Sullivan from SOSV. And I think there's time for something like that again, because I think it's changed so much. And like, it's changed so much in that it's not, you know, it's not just about there's also a huge challenge around diversity. And I mean, we're just bringing the social challenges we have in general in Ireland into entrepreneurism. But I mean, I think there's a whole thing there that has to be tackled and has to be challenged. And I don't know, I'm hoping that I'm doing something in the background at the moment around that conversation. It'll either work, or, you know, I'll just be found, or I'll just go missing some night. If I go missing some night, I'll post a copy of what I'm doing to Mary McKenna, right?
Yeah,
So,
well, I was going to say, shout me and see if I can help you with it, DC. So that would be a good way to go.
Perfect. Come here. Look, we've probably exceeded everybody's lunch break and stuff like that. What I would say, I look, there's one last question here from Gordon. I have to answer it, Gordon. I cogged enough stuff off you during college. But so Gordon's asking this question about, there's plenty of money out there in terms of funding, but what are my views in terms of the pandemic's effect on investment in new product solutions when so much focus on cost saving and consolidation? Look, cost saving and consolidation will always be there. For me, I look at that stuff and I kind of think a lot of it just comes down to it's a marketing challenge. You know, yes, maybe 6 months ago you would be going out and you would be talking about how awesome your product is and what it's going to do. Maybe now it's just, you know, maybe, yeah, I probably wouldn't like to be selling luxury goods right now. But at the same point, it comes back to that thing. If your business is delivering value, and if you can demonstrate that value, if you can go to somebody and say, I'm going to save you X hours per week, currently you're paying a staff member Y to do that. So actually, look, we're going to save you on average 10 to 15 grand a month by engaging in this, or over the course of a year, we're going to save you 40 or 50 grand by doing Y. Like, I think that value proposition is going to hold just as true now. So, I mean, I guess it's kind of redefining, again, coming back to don't sell the benefits. So, okay, folks. With that, look, thank you so much for joining us today. The Republic of Work plug. We're here every week at this time. If you follow us on any of the social channels or go to the Republic of Work website, you'll see all the events and stuff coming up. I've been a bad boy and I haven't bothered reading what's on next week, so I can't plug it for you. Sorry, Angie. But as I said, if you go to the website, you'll find out what topic is up next week. In the meantime, if I can help anybody, dc@republicofwork.com, or if you're really lazy, me@dc.ie. It's 6 letters, so it's a pretty easy email address. Thanks so much, guys. Talk to you very soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks a million.